Thanks to Narwal for sponsoring this video. There are a ton of robot vacuum and mop options out there, and choosing which one to buy has not really been the easiest thing to figure out. But when products come out with new features that kind of change everything, well, it makes the decision a little bit easier. And that's where Narwal's Freo X Ultra comes in. It's kind of the next generation of the Freo that I've talked about here on the channel before. This is an all-in-one solution for both mopping and vacuuming autonomously so that you can kind of sit back and relax, and this thing will just keep your house clean. Now, at first glance, this doesn't look all that different from the Narwal Freo that came before it. I've talked about that here on the channel. It's one of my favorite products that I use here in the house. Use it on a pretty much weekly basis, but it doesn't really look that different because honestly there's not that much that needed to be changed from that first generation because it was really already that good. But the things that Narwal has changed with the Freo X Ultra take it to that, I guess, ultra level, and well, it's a fitting name. Now I'll talk about those new things in a second here, but first, what is the Freo X Ultra? And this to me is the best overall solution for a robot vacuum and a robot mop. Now, there's been a ton of different companies, different products out there that, attempt to do this very same thing. But where I think the Narwal Freo X Ultra, stands above the other ones out there is how good it actually does those tasks. And it seems like when companies try to put both tasks into one product, one of them has to suffer. So it'd be a vacuum first that can also mop, or it'd be a mop first that can also vacuum, but they weren't exactly on equal footing. They were just, a little bit compromised. And honestly, that was one of the things about the original Freo that I wished would have been improved. It was a great mop that I wished would be better at vacuuming, but that's exactly what I think the Freo X Ultra kind of took on and is trying to fix here, and I think they did it. Now, I think the biggest improvement is on the vacuum side of things. The mop, I still think, is the best in the industry, like hands down, but the vacuum is where they've made a ton of improvements, and it's really every single step of the road, they have done something new and better. And first, that's just with the suction power of the vacuum. Before, it wasn't all that strong. It would get the job done, but it wasn't like a top industry leading suction on this robot vacuum, but now it pretty much is. It has 8,200 pascals of suction power, which means that it's going to vacuum up anything in its path. And that includes things like pet hair, human hair, dust, debris, things you spill in the kitchen, really anything that needs to be vacuumed that you would maybe traditionally pull out your, big vacuum, your typical household vacuum, things that you would use that for, this can just handle it now. And the suction is great, but what that really translates to is like the types of things that it can be picked up with it. And really that comes down to size, because if you don't have enough suction, then it's not gonna be able to pick up certain items, but now it can. So things that have, like half an inch of area, so like dog food or M&Ms or, things in that size, it can have enough suction to pick up. And then on the other end of the spectrum, it can pick up all of that fine dust, human dead skin, all the gross stuff that you don't wanna think about. It can get all of that too. So you kind of have the best of the range there. Now, suction is great, but that is just one half of the story when it comes to the efficiency and how good it is at actually vacuuming your area. The other very important part of that is the actual brush that kind of sweeps everything into the vacuum itself. And while those are always a pain point with these types of products, not just robot vacuums, but literally any vacuum, the brush is always one of the failure points. And simply because that thing is spinning super fast and it always gets tangled with something, and especially hair. The way that this is able to not get tangled is thanks to the brush design itself. This has a few things going for it. First, the shape of the brush is tilted at 50 degrees so that the hair is only able to go in one direction when it's spinning. And there's also cone-shaped spiral rubber strips in there that don't let the hair get deep into the brush itself. But I think most importantly is that this is only attached on one side of the brush. The other side is open so that while it's spinning, everything can kind of get channeled onto one side where there's nothing attached there. So it just kind of falls off and gets sucked into the vacuum. It's a smart idea, and it actually works. And when you're living in a house like I do with a pet and a lot of hair from my wife, this thing comes in handy. So with those two improvements to the vacuuming side, this is already a much better vacuum than it used to be, and it's really at the top of its class. But what I think really set it over the edge for me and really sealed the deal is that no longer do you have to, empty it every single time the vacuum runs. It now has a self-contained dust processing solution that lets you vacuum for up to 7 weeks without ever having to empty it yourself. Now, typically the way vacuums have done this in the past is by having, a base station that has a bag in there that, sucks out the dust into that. It works, it's fine. But the way this does it is with something I've never seen before, and that's with something they call dust compression tech. And really the way to think of this is that, when you're vacuuming dust and debris up, mainly what you're vacuuming is air. There's actually not that much material there. It's just really fluffy and not compact at all. And what Narwal did is basically design a way to use the vacuum built in, use that air pressure to compact the dust in the dust bin of the vacuum so that you go from something that takes up the entire space to something that is very compact so that you can again go and vacuum up and repeat the process for, up to 7 weeks. It's a great idea, one that I've never thought of, and that way you don't have to expand the base station. That can still look sleek, but you also don't have to empty it every single time. It's a neat solution. And then after those 7 weeks, or whenever that 1 liter dust bin gets full, you just take it out and toss it and, put in another one. And because you're only doing it, every other month at the most, well, you don't really have to buy all that many. And this also means that the filter will stay clean because you won't have to clean that yourself because it's all integrated into one system. And because it doesn't have to empty into a base station, it's much quieter and it doesn't, create any dust or any excess things that you have to clean. It's just all self-contained. I think this is the right way to do it. Now that was all on the vacuum side because that's honestly what got me so excited over last generations, but the mop is still as good as ever. What I really like about the mopping system here is that it actually scrubs and cleans your floor with the spinning and rotating mop heads on the bottom. There's 2 of them and they come basically all the way together, so there's nothing missed in the middle there. So it's basically going to be able to clean everywhere on your floor. And it actually does a good job of scrubbing the floors with a good amount of pressure. It can do up to 12 newtons of pressure. And what's great is that this process is also completely automated and you don't have to really stand around and baby it or anything. You can do it all itself because there is a dirty water bin inside where all the dirty water will go. There's a clean water bin where it can come and refill as needed to get more water so it can continue cleaning. And there's also a spot for detergent so that, your house can smell nice and clean, which I think is almost as important as it looking clean. And then once it is done cleaning, it will come back to the station and wash the mop heads themselves so they're not, super grimy and dirty. And then it will go a step further and dry them so that they don't get mildewy or have any mold or any smell issues. This really is an all-in-one solution and it's all located inside the base station itself. So it has a really sleek look that I think fits in most people's homes, and it doesn't look like some crazy appliance. It looks like something that you're okay to have, sitting out in the living room. And I think for a lot of these products, the design of what the base station looks like is kind of an afterthought because I guess really who cares, but I don't know, people like me do care. And since I'm gonna have to have this thing out in order to use it the most effectively, well, having a base station that looks good is important. Now, to get this level of clean, of course, there's going to have to be some type of smarts inside, and well, there is, but that is also upgraded this time around. So there is now a tri-laser obstacle avoidance system here, and that means there are multiple lasers that can scan the environment around it so that it can get closer to objects without actually hitting them, and so that it can scan and see what the world around it is. And what the tri-laser sensors are doing is basically you have one on top that kind of scans the room, you have one right in front of it so it knows what's in front of it, and then now you also have one on the side. So if it's trying to get close up to something, it can just better detect how close it actually is. So that means it can get closer and get a better clean. But it's also using AI dirt sense, which basically can analyze how dirty the environment is as it cleans, and it will automatically determine if it needs to go back and clean again so that it can just ultimately give you the best clean possible. So for instance, back where we let our dog in and out, tracking in dirt from being outside, this area is particularly dirty, and one pass of the mop might not clean it all the way. And well, it can sense that with basically the dirty water that it's picking up and using AI algorithms so that it knows, okay, we got to go back, clean that again, and it'll keep doing that until it senses that it's finally clean. And of course, to control all of this, there is the app, and this is where you can see the map of your house. You can tell it which areas to go and clean specifically. You can tell it which mode to use so that it cleans. Maybe you just want to mop, maybe you just want to vacuum, or maybe you want to do both. All of that can be controlled here. You can do scheduling. Anything you can think of is in the app. But what's great is that on the base station itself, you can also control what the vacuum and mop does. So you could just control it from there or from anywhere else on your phone. So finally, having all of these great features in one product means you could just buy this one and kind of never think about it again. There is a ton of options in the robot vacuum and mop space, and choosing which one to go with is a little tougher sometimes. But if you want something that can mop and something that can vacuum and that you don't have to think about every single day, well, this is a pretty great option. So if you want to pick up one of these for yourself or learn more about them, check out the link down in the description, or go to Google or Amazon and search the Narwal Freo X Ultra so you can learn more about it and pick one up for yourself. But yeah, my hope of having an appliance that just kind of works and I don't have to think about, that cleans my home, well, that future seems like it's finally here.